All right, so AEW was fined $10,000 because, well, because of the Double or Nothing match between Kenny Omega and John Moxley, and $10,000 is nothing. Let's be honest about that. Like, it's literally nothing. That will be paid. They got 30 days to pay it, but it'll be paid probably 10 minutes after it was issued. But this is the problem with bureaucrats and state athletic commissions and all that type of stuff. This is why Vince McMahon came out in the 80s and just told everybody that it wasn't real, because these state athletic commissions are absolute vampires. Okay. And I didn't talk about this a couple of weeks ago when I think, well, maybe I did. I don't know. I don't remember. But a couple of weeks ago, somebody snitched to Florida on the WWE and they called the cops and all that type of stuff. And they had the sheriff's department and all that shit out there. And apparently somebody did the same thing. Apparently Chris Cruz, who worked at WCW, who claims now on Twitter that even though he was very happy that it happened, that this fining happened to AEW, he claimed he didn't start this and that the commission watched the match and decided that the match was too violent or whatever the fuck. But I got the consent order right here. Maryland State Athletic Commission versus All Elite Wrestling. I'm going to read some of this just so we can have some background of what are we talking about here. So it says the matter comes before Maryland State Athletic Commission, the commission, as a result of a complaint filed by Commission against All Elite Wrestling LLC as a professional wrestling promoter on November the 9th, 2009. The respondent was the promoter for a professional wrestling event presented by AEW at the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore, Maryland. During a match between licensed wrestlers Jonathan Good, Mr. Good, which is John Moxley, and Tyson Smith, Mr. Smith, which is Kenny Omega, both Mr. Good and Mr. Smith suffered lacerations which caused blood to be introduced into the ring. Upon review of the matter, the commission determined that administrative charges against the respondent were appropriate for alleged violations of Maryland law pertaining to wrestling contests and related regulations. Prior to the issuance of formal administrative charges, the commission and the respondent agreed to enter this consent order as a full and final resolution of this matter with the terms as follows. Okay, so this means that AEW agreed to pay $10,000 and to whatever else is in this consent order. But they have talking about this. They're talking about this in here. Let's see. The parties agree and stipulate that the following acts are true and accurate. 1. At all times relevant to the matters set forth in this consent order, the respondent was licensed by the commission as a promoter and or the commission had jurisdiction over the matter. So AEW had to agree that they were under the State Athletic Commission. 2. On November the 9th, 2009, during a professional wrestling match at an event held at Royal Farms Arena presented and promoted by the respondent, both Mr. Good and Mr. Smith introduced foreign objects into the ring, including a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire, a broom with bristles wrapped in barbed wire, a tool similar to an ice pick. Mr. Good used a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire to strike Mr. Smith 3 times across his back and caused lacerations from which Mr. Smith bled. Mr. Smith used a broom with bristles wrapped in barbed wire to strike Mr. Good across the back of his head and his shoulders and caused lacerations which led to Mr. Good bleeding. Mr. Smith also raked the broom across Mr. Good's back while Mr. Good was lying face down and twice stomped on the broom after placing the broom on Mr. Good's back. The respondent was responsible for these acts of Mr. Good and Mr. Smith. So that, in other words, all of these different things that happened in the match, AEW is responsible for it. Based on these aforementioned facts, the commission finds that the following statutes. Okay, we're not going to go into the statutes. That's just a waste of time. So, future violations of applicable laws and regulations may result in disciplinary action, including, but not limited to, suspension and revocation of the subject license and the imposition of additional civil penalties. The respondent, by entering in this consent order, expressly waives the right to any further notification of administrative charges, the right to an administrative hearing on the charges, the making of further findings of fact conclusions of the law, any and all further proceedings before the commission to which the respondent may otherwise be entitled in this matter, and any rights to appeal this order. So that means they can't appeal it because they agreed to it already. The respondent is represented by counsel and enters into this consent order freely, knowingly, and voluntarily. Based on these stipulations, it is the 28th day of April 2020 by the State Athletic Commission. So essentially, this is everything that is in here. This here is some of the things that they did wrong. They said prohibited activities. The following actions are prohibited: unsportsmanlike or physically dangerous conduct, deliberately lacerating oneself or one's opponent, or by any other means introducing human or animal blood into the ring. So you can't use even fake blood in Maryland. This is a well. I'm about to go on a political rant. This what the fuck? Why not? Okay, we're not doing human sacrifices here. It's part of the show. I mean, if you film a movie in Baltimore, is it? Can you not have blood in the movie? This is the problem with state athletic commissions. You know, there's this delineation. Look, and I understand that pro wrestling isn't a movie. It also isn't really a strict sport. It is again, it is always some amalgamation of the two. This nonsense where you can't introduce blood of any kind, whether fake or real. Well, I guess you could have fake blood. I guess you could have smeared ketchup. That's obviously fake. But you can't have real blood, real animal blood, or real human blood, which is absolute just it's absolutely terrible. A promoter shall be responsible to the commission for the conduct of its representatives and employees. The promoter shall be responsible for conducting wrestling contents in a safe, peaceful, and orderly fashion. That's not wrestling. Wrestling is anything but safe, peaceful, and orderly. That's bullshit. Violation of the commission's regulations by a representative or employee of the promoter may be grounds for disciplinary action against the promoter. In addition, a violation of the above referenced provisions subject to violator to a civil penalty in an amount of $5,000 per violation. Based on the aforementioned violation, the respondent agrees to pay a civil penalty and to the commission in the amount of $10,000 within 30 days of the consent order. The respondent is entering this consent order in the spirit of conciliation and cooperation in an effort to avoid litigation. The commission acknowledges that while AEW took precautions to reduce the potential injury for Mr. Good and Mr. Smith by using materials in certain instances to simulate injury, so even though they knew this shit was fake, they still fined them? Come on, yo. And freely and merely give the appearance of bleeding, blood was introduced into the ring. How do they know? Okay. In other instances during the professional wrestling match, well, I guess it was pretty obvious. If you watched the match, they were bleeding. And then they used the sugar glass, and there was a bunch of shit going on in that match, which I didn't like the match, by the way, but whatever. It was just too long. Respondents, the deliberate and repeated actions of two referenced wrestlers as scripted by AEW, the respondent consents to a finding of, and the commission hereby finds a violation of the business regulation article, blah, 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 blah. Okay, this is the problem with government. Okay? You got these people who have drawn this crazy line in the sand that you can't bleed in a match. You can't even have fake blood in a match. There's no real reason for this. It claimed for it to be safe, but wrestling is anything but safe. I don't understand how blood in and of itself. That's not even that's the part that they actually pay more attention to. If you're a wrestling company, you're paying more attention to the blood than anything else. Meanwhile, a guy could kill himself with a power bomb, or a power driver, or a body slam could go wrong, or one of these idiots who are out here doing topes can fucking Sting and Rick Rude broke his back when Sting jumped over the top rope, and they fell on this little the ring was elevated, and when they went over, Rick Rude's back hit the edge of the ring, and it essentially ended his career. Didn't have shit to do with blood. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat came off the top rope, fell on his back, ended his career. Didn't have shit to do with blood. Okay, but for some reason, blood is something that is really gotten people all worked up. And it's really had people worked up for a long time now. I remember there's always these no blading rules and no blood allowed rules and all this type of shit going on in wrestling. And it's been going on since the 80s, 90s. WCW had no blood rules, and at times WWE has no blood rules, even though they break those rules whenever they see fit. There's times where Vince is like, fuck it, we're gonna break the rules for this match because we need it. But this is not going to do anything but make AEW seem like a bunch of badasses, which very intelligent people in the comment section responding to Chris Cruz noticed. They're just going to make AEW sound like they're the rebels, like they're the guys who are so dangerous that they needed to get fined by a state athletic commission. They're just going to use this to promote. So there's not going to be any problem for them. But we need to do something about these fucking snitches. All these people, like there's a lot of people now, and I'm recording this right after AEW Dynamite, where they did this match between Sammy Guevara and Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy. And there was no social distancing. There was tons of fans, actual fans in the building. Not just wrestlers sitting in the crowd. There were people there. There was children there. There were people without masks on. There were people without gloves on. There were some people, I think somebody wasn't even wearing shoes. There were, of course, people not following social distancing guidelines. This was in Florida, by the way. And I don't give a shit. I don't care. They claim that people were tested before before the show, hours before the show. And that's how they'll be able to get away with this. I don't care. Okay? I literally don't care. To me, all these people rushing to, like, my thing is, I'm really more upset at people being hypocrites, because if WWE had run a show with a large number of people in the background, especially non-essential personnel, these people were bitching and bitching and bitching and bitching and tweeting and sending stuff to the state and all types of stuff when WWE was the only show running. And now that they're on this sort of schedule where they're doing a show taping, where they're not live every week, it's kind of died down a little bit. But now AEW is doing not just this, but they've always done the whole crowd, the wrestlers in the crowd thing. But now they've gone to the next level, where now they just have people from the outside in the building. They don't have only essential personnel anymore. They're now just going straight, we have people in the crowd here. And yeah, they're going to be gathered together and all that type of stuff. And yeah, there were some people, I think, trolling online about it. But they really just wanted people to be consistent. You know, if you were going to complain when WWE did it, why are you not complaining now? And a lot of people just kind of said, well, who cares, you know? And that type of shit is really what pisses me off. It's like, we want to do this stuff. We want to be what you want to call it, social justice warriors, and everybody's got to follow the rules. But, you know, we're going to be okay when certain people break the rules, and we're going to be extra butthurt when other people don't follow the rules. And I hate that shit. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. This is why government should not be involved in this shit. It allows certain people to break certain rules, and it forces other people to follow the rules, you know? And I'm not saying that WWE is in any way a victim in this situation. They could probably do the same thing. They just probably don't want to, because they're on a higher level than AEW. And because some of these people who are complaining would definitely complain if WWE did it. But they're not going to complain when AEW do it, because AEW needs every advantage it can get. But it's that kind of thing that where the government allows certain people to get advantages, that's bullshit. You know, everybody should be running on at least on as level a playing field as possible. But this fine is not going to be a big deal. If they get fined for the Florida non-social distancing, whatever the fuck, that won't mean anything either. They'll just pay these fines. It'll probably make them look bad, but wrestling fans won't care. They'll just see them as being the new age rebel promotion and not give a shit. I don't know what Chris Cruz or whoever was doing this snitching, or the state athletic commission was trying to do. None of this shit matters. People trying to protect people from themselves is fucking stupid. If the performers agreed to do it, let them fucking do it. Back the fuck off. You know, stop denying people agency and thinking that you have to protect people when it's really not. It's just extortion, if we're being honest. It wasn't like Kenny Omega, you know, went to the athletic commission and said, "Oh my God, they're making me bleed in this match, and I don't want to." You know, he did something, and then all of a sudden, some asshole decided to get butthurt and decided they wanted to sue. Like, stop trying to protect people. Like, people make choices that you don't agree with. Just let people make these choices, man. Let people make choices that you don't agree with. Fuck off.